What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my builds guide and unit review of Gerald. So he's a Gen 7 Lance Cavalier with 179 BST and he also comes with a preferred weapon, Breaker Lance. So this can give him +3 attack on top of his already high attack stat, and at start of turn he can inflict -6 attack and defense debuff and panic on the foe who has got the highest attack and defense total on the enemy team and any kind of foes that are within 2 spaces of that foe. So this is a global thing. He doesn't really have to meet any kind of stat check or be above certain HP threshold. This is always going to be happening at the start of the turn, so he can provide some unique support to his allies. So it could be considered like a chill attack defense 3 plus panic. So that is a fantastic global support. And then the second part of this weapon requires him to be above 25% HP, and if that condition is met, then he can inflict -6 attack and defense debuff on the foe in the combat, and he can also make a guaranteed follow-up attack. So this is really great because being a slow cavalier, you have to rely on quicker post otherwise, and this weapon just absolutely frees him up, and he can easily run some other slot B skill like a trace skill instead of running quicker post. So this weapon is really solid, providing that support and also helping Gerald in the combat, and his stats also complement this kind of weapon really well because he has got high base attack of 43, having a super boon in it, and also having high defense of 39. He can definitely be compared to a Gen 5 Cavalier Ducil, who is a premium Lance Cavalier logged at 5-star rarity. And as you can see that Gerald pretty much has a better weapon than Ducil because Ducil needs to be solo to activate his weapon. And here Gerald has more flexibility because he can be near his allies and he can still trigger his weapon as long as he has got that HP threshold. Not to mention Gerald can also provide the support to your teammates with the attack, defense and panic debuff that he can do with his weapon. And Gerald is pretty much a more offensive version of Ducil, trading some of the defense and resistance for attack and speed. The extra attack can definitely make him nuke harder, and the extra speed can make it so that he can double many of these slower tanks who have follow-up negation. Ducil is not going to be able to win the speed check, but the amount of speed that Gerald has got, he's going to be able to win the speed check and still double many of the slower tanks who have follow-up negation. So that can help him offensively. Ducil is going to be a bit more bulky. He does have access to more flowers, but his availability is definitely not as good as Gerald, who is a Grail unit and can be merged up by a free-to-play player pretty easily. We are going to be getting a Sacred Stones Hall of Forms next month, so Ducil might actually be present in it. And it would be kind of funny if in like 2 years Ducil gets a weapon refine and then takes over Gerald with his new weapon refine. But as of right now, Gerald is absolutely fantastic as a free-to-play Lance Cavalier with this weapon. And if this is how he compares to a premium Lance Cavalier, then you can imagine what happens when you compare him to the other Grail Cavaliers who do not even have a preferred weapon and have to rely on something like quicker post. So Gerald overall is a pretty solid free-to-play unit, and we are off to a good start with Gen 7 free-to-play units. For his base kit, he does have attack defense catch 3, and we have seen this before on Sedgar. He also has distant guard 3 just like Kronia. So his fodder is not really anything new. Overall, Gerald is a pretty fantastic free-to-play unit who is a good bulky Lance Cavalier with extremely high attack stats, and he can also have the auto follow-up with his weapon, so he definitely does not have to rely on quicker post. And because of being a Gen 7 Cavalier, there's absolutely no need of having a dual force skill for him if you want to use him in arena, so that can be pretty good. And one thing which can set Gerald apart from a lot of the Lance Cavaliers is the fact that he's not just combat oriented. He can also provide the support to your teammates with the attack and defense debuff and also the panic support. And he is going to be targeting the opponents who have got the highest total attack and defense, and usually those are going to be the tanks, so that can be really useful to your allies, especially the ones which use Plagian weapons. So if you're using some similar free-to-play units who use Plagian weapons, then they pair up really well with the debuffs that Gerald can provide them. Now, we do have a bunch of Lance Cavaliers in the premium pool like Brave Erica, Brave Chrom, and of course Brave Eliwood also going to be showing up in a couple of days in the Hall of Forms. So some people might be less incentivized to invest into Gerald, even though Gerald does play a bit differently because of being a bulky Lance Cavalier, but still people do have these Lance Cavaliers already. And because of being a slower unit, he's of course going to be susceptible to null follow-up enemies who can stop his follow-up attack. And if you run attack smoke 4 on him for the follow-up negation, then they can of course bypass that as well with their null follow-up. Gerald, even on a budget, can still hit pretty hard with that high attack stat, and a build like this can help you in limited hero battles, resonant battles, or even in arena assault, and his support is going to be pretty nice. So you can give him guard 3 from Luthier, and this can definitely help him as a slower unit, preventing the special charges of the enemies, especially at Unmerged. And for his special, you can simply give him Bonfire over Dragonfang, which just has higher cooldown. Attack defense catch as a Sacred Seal is pretty good for him because he can debuff the enemies with his weapon itself, so it does have good synergy with the cat skills in general and also the Sacred Seal. But if you want to invest a bit more into him, then he can grab hold of the nearest fallen Gustav and he can fodder him to Gerald to make this kind of build. This is pretty much going to be the best build that he can run on Gerald, and this allows him to get the follow-up negation out of Attack Smoke 4, which is really helpful. And I feel like the Trace skill is pretty much the best option here for Gerald because while you can run lull attack defense, your Azita is going to be panicking the enemies many times. So the mobility of a Trace skill is always going to be pretty helpful. And Gerald is a bulky Lance Cavalier, so focusing on his attack and defense is pretty much going to be the way to go. And he does have super boons for his attack and defense both. It's worth noting that in the future, if we do get attack defense clash, then I guess he can try and run that as well because he's a Cavalier. But again, he's no Brave Salif with that 4 movement, but still the attack and defense debuff neutralization could be pretty nice with that clash skill. But nonetheless, this is a pretty standard Gerald build that you're going to be seeing quite a lot. And you can also use Zeke in the Divine Code section to get the tier 4 version of the cat skill and the lull skill at the same time. Attack defense menace is going to be a bit redundant on him because as it says he can get the attack and defense debuff. So that's why Attack Smoke 4 is pretty much a better slotsy skill, and it can also help him in the combat with that follow-up negation. You can also use him with Heavy Blade and Gale Force, and he's definitely a better user of Heavy Blade than Dusil because of having higher attack stat and the fact that he can get the visible debuffs on the opponent's attack with his weapon. So you can definitely run a build like this, and with the Trace skill it can definitely provide you with some nice mobility. Unfortunately, he doesn't have -1 special cooldown in his weapon, so Gale Force is still at its max cooldown of 5, but still overall he can trigger Heavy Blade, especially against a melee opponent who can counter attack, and with the Heavy Blade he can get the special acceleration. You can also use him with Sturdy Surge for a more player phase build. This is definitely quite an expensive build because of Sturdy Surge being a rare skill, and you can run this with Glimmer or even Heavy Blade and Bonfire to get the healing in the player phase, and then you can just have the mobility of the Canto from the Trace skill. His Slotsy is definitely quite flexible with this build, and you can try and run the Rouse 4 skill, which can also give you the Null Panic. I definitely like the mixed phase builds a lot more with Gerald, but if you want to try a more player phase build, then Sturdy Surge could be a fun option. And finally, you can also use him in Arena at Plus and Merge. He can score 180 BST because of being a Gen 7 Cavalier, so you don't really need any kind of dual skill on him, but still he's not the highest scoring Grail unit that you can get for the Arena scoring, especially if you're competitive. We still have Yanfei from the last generation, but still Gerald can be a nice unit in Arena if you've just built him up, and if you also want to use him in Arena and you don't really care too much about the scoring. So the reason why he can be pretty good in Arena is obviously because of the support that he can provide. So in Arena, rally skills and visible buffs are super common, so the panic has a lot of value there, and this is a global panic, so you don't really have to position him in certain way in Arena to get this effect. And the attack and defense debuff can also be really helpful until you run into, harsh command and attack defense unities, but still it could be pretty nice to support your teammates. And because of that, he can easily target a unit like Duochrome because of his high attack and defense. So you can take on Duochrome, who's definitely one of the more annoying units in Arena with this kind of build, especially after he has panicked him and when he has got the debuffs on him. So this is a Plus and Merge Duochrome, and he's going to be dying to this kind of Gerald with a distant counter Ruptured Sky build. With this, you can take on one of the most common threats in Arena, and he's also not the worst at tanking mages because his resistance is not the lowest. Of course, you should not be tanking green mages and such because they're just going to be killing him, but still, as long as he has got the weapon strangle advantage, he should be doing decent. And if you don't really care too much about the Duochrome matchup, then I guess you can just go with the melee matchup focused build with attack defense catch 4 and also the smoke 4 skill. So with this build, you can definitely use him in both phases in Arena, which is going to be pretty nice. And the Canto mobility on a Cavalier can be really helpful. The trenches are going to be annoying in Arena, but still he can function well in Arena, despite not being the highest scoring unit. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to build up Gerald. He's definitely a pretty fantastic unit. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks or by becoming a YouTube member down below. And for more Faye videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes and Gerald's weapon both cause panic. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.